This footage, taken inside a submarine deep in the Greenland Sea, captures a strange humanoid sea creature. A large webbed hand shocks the crew, and we catch a quick glimpse of the creature before it swims off.
I don't think anybody can dive in Bimini and not believe that these are man-made artifacts.
The ocean is deep, vast, and often terrifying. Who knows what lurks in those crystal marine waters? 80% of it remains unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored.
A sunken city rediscovered after thousands of years, crystals and pyramids on the ocean floor, China's Atlantis, and more. These are ancient structures found in the ocean that shouldn't exist. The submerged city of Pavlopetri, found off the coast of southern Greece, is believed to be over 5,000 years old, making it the oldest known sunken city in the world. Discovered in 1967 by Nicholas Fleming, it's an ancient settlement almost perfectly preserved, with its streets, buildings, and tombs all sitting underwater. Over time, earthquakes and rising sea levels submerged the place around 1000 BCE, and it never resurfaced. The city was a trading hub. There's evidence that it had connections with Crete and other civilizations of the time. Excavations have revealed 15 well-planned buildings and a complex water system. These people were skilled engineers. With high-tech tools like sonar mapping and underwater robots, archaeologists have been able to create a 3D digital map of the city, giving us a closer look at its layout and how it would have functioned. The mystery of crystal pyramids in the Bermuda Triangle has been talked about since the 60s. The first real claim came from a man named Dr. Ray Brown, who, while scuba diving off the coast of the Bahamas, reported coming across this underwater pyramid.
That he came across the most magnificent find of all. In the murkiness, he spotted the tip of a submerged pyramid, barely visible above the ocean floor.
He described it as being made of a crystal-like material, even saying he was able to retrieve a piece of it, but that his camera equipment was destroyed in a storm, thus he was unable to return with actual photographic evidence of the pyramid. Dubious for sure, but since then more stories about underwater pyramids have spread. And then again, the documentary that his story comes from was narrated by Leonard Nimoy, so I can see why people were so intrigued. I mean, it's Mr. Spock. I'd believe it too. Pyramids were found at a depth of 2,000 meters. The report claimed that they were 3 times bigger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. The pyramids were allegedly made of this crystal-like substance. The thing is, Dr. Meir Verlag has never been verified to exist. So, is this an actual find or just another piece of Bermuda Triangle folklore? Off the coast of Malta, a discovery in 1999 started a bit of a debate. They're known as the underwater temples of Gebel Gol-Bahar. Hubert Zeitmer, a retired businessman, discovered the ruins. Zeitmer wasn't a scientist, and he was into the whole ancient astronauts conspiracy stuff, so a lot of people dismissed his findings, but that doesn't mean it's not intriguing. There hasn't been an official study into this, but unofficial research has claimed that the ruins could be thousands of years old. Some even think this area was once inhabited and could have been submerged by a massive flood, possibly the same one described in the Bible. Now, of course, mainstream scholars aren't really buying this theory, with some arguing that the rocks and boulders are just the result of illegal dumping, but it's not just the structures themselves that have people talking. There are also cart ruts, grooves in the seabed that stretch into the water, similar to ones found on the island of Malta itself, which means this area might have been on dry land at one point in time. What you're looking at here are the submerged ruins of a long-lost city called Xichang, aka China's Atlantis. It's pretty spectacular. It sits beneath the waters of Qingdao Lake in the Zhejiang province. The city of Xichang, or Lion City, was once a bustling metropolis during the Ming and Qing dynasties, but in 1959, it was intentionally flooded to create the Xing'an Dam and its hydroelectric station, which caused nearly 300,000 people to be relocated. The city was forgotten until 2001, when the Chinese government sent an expedition to explore what remained of this lost city. But it wasn't until 2011 that the discovery really took off. The Chinese National Geography published photos and illustrations showing what the city might have looked like before it sank. And what's wild is how well preserved the place is now. There are hundreds of archways with these intricate carvings of lions and dragons and phoenixes. Some inscriptions even date back to 1777. Because the water protects the ruins from weathering, Xichang looks almost as if it were frozen in time, and divers from all over the world come to explore the area. Bimini Road was found off the coast of Bimini Island in the Bahamas in 1968 by Joseph Mason Valentine. The site consists of these large, flat stones arranged in a straight line across the seabed, leading many to believe that it could be the ancient remains of a city. As Valentine explored the area further, he uncovered more outlines of possible ruins around the road. Some were quick to point out that it seemed like evidence of the lost city of Atlantis, arguing that the stones were just clearly too uniform to be some natural formation. Mainstream scientists, though, think that the road is the result of nature, that erosion over a long period of time has just created this illusion of a flat road. Ray Brown, another researcher, claimed to have discovered a sunken pyramid near Berry Island, not far from Bimini. He was on a mission to find sunken galleons when he noticed the quote-unquote pyramid, and as he later reported, his navigation equipment malfunctioned right before the discovery, so maybe there's something to this one. Off the coast of Cuba, there's something pretty wild lying underwater: pyramids. Using sonar, researchers found what looks like the remains of an ancient city, complete with giant stone structures. The find was made in 2001 by a marine engineer named Pauline Zalitsky and her husband, Paul Weinswig, owners of a Canadian company called Advanced Digital Communications. Some of these formations are massive, around 400 meters wide and 40 meters tall, or about 1,312 feet wide and 131 feet tall or so. And they're not natural either, at least they really don't seem to be. The way they're laid out suggests they were designed by humans, so the questions are, how old are they and who built them? Some experts think the city could be 6,000 years old, others believe it could go back as far as 50,000 years. Even more interesting, there are strange symbols and carvings on some of these stones, and they don't match any known languages. But they do kind of look a bit like Aztec or Mayan symbols. Ships have been reporting strange sightings in the Indian Ocean for over a century, and it all starts in 1873. On March 23rd of that year, the crew of the ship Adelheid, crossing the South China Sea, spotted a massive, mile-wide disc floating just beneath the surface, glowing with light. Then in 1879, the HMS Vulture crew reported seeing two giant, quote, Ferris wheels spinning in opposite directions with spokes 25 feet wide and 100 feet apart. Over the years, there have been more and more of these reports. In 1901, the crew of the SS Kilwa in the Persian Gulf saw rays of light coming from an underwater disc-like object. Then in 1943, sailor Matthew Mangle described a huge glowing disc pacing his ship, also in the Persian Gulf. These sightings didn't just happen once or twice, but across multiple decades and locations, each with similar descriptions of these bright, rotating, glowing discs beneath the water. They're all still a mystery to this day, with no clear explanation for what these massive underwater objects could be. At one time, the city of Neapolis was an important Roman city in Tunisia, until it was destroyed by a tsunami in 365. The same disaster hit Alexandria down the coast, but Neapolis was completely wiped out and stayed lost for over 1,700 years. Then in 2017, after 7 years of digging, archaeologists rediscovered it. Even though Neapolis was a Roman city, it sided with Carthage during the Punic Wars, which led the Romans to mostly just ignore this place in their records. But when they started uncovering this city, they found it was much bigger and more developed than they would have expected. One of the coolest finds was over 100 tanks used to make garum, a popular fish sauce in ancient Rome. And it turns out Neapolis might have been one of the top producers of it. In 2007, underwater archaeologist Mark Hawley discovered something incredible in Lake Michigan, a structure that looks a lot like Stonehenge, known as the Michigan Stonehenge. This underwater arrangement of stones sits about 40 feet below the surface and forms this circular pattern. And some of the stones even appear to be lined up in a straight row, which is certainly strange. So what are these stones doing there? Could they be the remnants of an ancient civilization? The way these stones are laid out suggests they were carefully arranged this way, not formed naturally. One of the most curious finds is a rock with what looks like it might have a mastodon carved into it. And to make it even more mind-blowing, these stones are thought to be around 9,000 years old, predating Stonehenge by about 4,000 years. This last one's different from pretty much everything else on this list. It's not an ancient city, but it's creepy all the same. A cemetery of sunken Japanese World War II ships. In 1944, Chuuk Lagoon in Micronesia was the site of Operation Hailstone, where US fighter planes bombed Japanese warships, and today this lagoon is home to over 60 shipwrecks, remnants of that brutal battle. It's all just sitting underwater now, corroding ships, tanks, and cars are even scattered across the seabed. As divers swim through the site, they might find barnacle-covered firearm, old gas masks, abandoned medicine bottles, personal items, all just frozen in time. Some of these wrecks even have the bones of soldiers who died in the battle. It's incredibly eerie, no doubt, but divers will also say the place has a certain beauty to it, a kind of haunting stillness. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.